this I love, and I knew I had to.
Based in the Forest Hills section of Queens, New York, the Ramones formed in 1974. Originally, the band was a trio consisting of Joey Ramone, Johnny Ramone, and Dee Dee Ramone, with Tommy Ramone acting as the group's manager. All of the group's members adopted the last name Ramone and dressed in torn blue jeans and leather jackets, in homage to 50s greaser rockers. The group played their first concert on March 30, 1974, at New York's Performance Studio. 2 months after the show, Joey switched to vocals and Tommy became the band's drummer. By the end of the summer, the Ramones had earned a residency at CBGB. For the next year, they played regularly at the nightclub, earning a dedicated cult following and inspiring several other artists to form bands with similar ideals. All of the Ramones' sets clocked in at about 20 minutes, featuring an unrelenting barrage of short, barely 2-minute songs. By the end of 1975, the Ramones secured a recording contract with Sire Discounting Patti Smith. They were the first New York punk band to sign a contract. Early in 1976, the Ramones recorded their debut album for just over $6,000. The resulting album, Ramones, was released in the spring, gained some critical attention and managed to climb to 111 on the US album charts. On July 4th, the band made their debut appearance in Britain, where their records were becoming a big influence on a new generation of bands. Throughout 1976, the Ramones toured constantly, inaugurating nearly 20 years of relentless touring. By the end of the year, the group released their second album, Ramones Leave Home. While the album just scraped the US charts, Leave Home became a genuine hit in England in the spring of 1977, peaking at number 48. By the summer of 1977, the Sex Pistols and the Ramones were seen as the two key bands in the punk rock revolution, but where the Pistols imploded, the Ramones kept on rolling. Following the UK Top 40 hit Sheena as a punk rocker, the Ramones released their third album Rocket to Russia in the fall of 1977. Tommy Ramone left the band in the spring of 1977, although he produced the group's subsequent album. He was replaced by former Voidoid Mark B., who immediately changed his name to Marky Ramone. With their new drummer in place, the Ramones recorded their fourth album Road to Ruin, which was released in the fall. Road to Ruin marked the band's first significant attempt to change their sound. Not only were there stronger bubblegum, girl group, surf, and 60s pop influences on the music, it was the first of their albums to run over a half hour. Although their sound was more accessible, it didn't gain the band a noticeably larger following. Neither did Rock and Roll High School, the 1979 Roger Corman film in which the Ramones had a pivotal part. The soundtrack to Rock and Roll High School and the UK only live album It's Alive were the band's only releases of 1979. For most of the year, they were in the studio recording their fifth album with legendary 60s pop producer Phil Spector. The title song to the Corman movie was the first track released from the sessions, although the soundtrack album did feature a number of older Ramones songs remixed by Spector. End of the Century, the Spector-produced Ramones album, finally appeared in January of 1980 to mixed reviews. Despite the lukewarm reception to the album, the record's cover of the Ronettes' Baby I Love You became their only top 10 British hit in America. None of the singles made an impact, although the record became their biggest hit, peaking at number 44. The Ramones continued their attempts at crossover success with their sixth album Pleasant Dreams, which was released in 1981. Featuring a production by former Hollies and 10cc member Graham Goldman, the record was a commercial disappointment in both America and England. The band was relatively quiet during 1982, spending most of their time touring. In the spring of 1983, the band returned with Subterranean Jungle, which was produced by Richie Cordell and Glenn Coltkin, the heads of the American indie label Berserkly Records. Not only did Subterranean Jungle fail to gain the band the larger audience they desired, it continued the erosion of the band's die-hard fanbase, as well as their decline in the eyes of many rock critics. Following the album's release, Marky Ramone left the band. He was replaced by Richard Bowe, a former member of the Velveteens, who changed his name to Richie Ramone. With 1984's Too Tough to Die, the Ramones delivered a belated response to America's burgeoning hardcore punk scene that was largely produced by Tommy Erdelyi. The album helped restore their artistic reputation, as did the 1985 single Bonzo Goes to Bitburgen attack on President Ronald Reagan's 1985 visit to Germany. Instead of continuing with the sound of Too Tough to Die, the Ramones began pursuing a more streamlined, stylized, and conventional take on their songwriting formula with 1986's Animal Boy. This was a direction the group followed for the remaining 10 years of their career. Following the release of 1987's Halfway to Sanity, Richie Ramone left the band and Marky Ramone rejoined the group. In 1988, the career retrospective Ramones Mania appeared. In 1989, the Ramones contributed the theme song to the Stephen King movie Pet Sematary, and the track was included on Brain Drain, which was released in the summer of that year. After its release, the group's bassist D.D. Ramone left the band to pursue a career as a rapper called D.D. King. After his debut rap recording failed miserably, he formed the band Chinese Dragons. D.D. was replaced by C.J. Ramone. In the early 90s, the Ramones sobered up, with both Joey and Marky undergoing treatment for alcoholism. The band returned to recording in 1992, first releasing the live Loco Live and then Mondo Bizarro, their first studio album in 3 years. Mondo Bizarro turned out to be a commercial failure, as did their 1994 covers album Acid Eaters. Following the release of Acid Eaters, the mainstream guitar rock audience in America finally embraced punk rock in the form of young bands like Green Day and The Offspring. Sensing that the climate may have been right for the crossover success they had desired for so many years, the Ramones immediately followed Acid Eaters with Adios Amigos, claiming that unless the new album sold in substantial numbers, the band would call it quits after a final farewell tour. Adios Amigos only spent 2 weeks in the charts. Nevertheless, the Ramones embarked on a long farewell tour that ran throughout the rest of 1995. The band was set to split in the beginning of 1996 when they were offered a slot on the 6th Lollapalooza, and they toured with the festival that summer. Following the completion of the tour, the Ramones parted ways, 20 years after the release of their first album. Just a few years later, Joey Ramone passed away on April 15, 2001, at age 49, the victim of lymphoma. Little more than a year after Joey's death, D.D. Ramone was found dead in his home in Los Angeles on June 5, 2002. Johnny Ramone passed away 2 years later on September 15, 2004 after a long battle with cancer. 10 years later, on July 11, 2014, Tommy Ramone, the last remaining member of the original Ramones foursome, died of cancer at his home in Queens, New York. Despite the passing of all 4 original members, the Ramones' legacy continued to be celebrated in a series of new archival projects. In 2016, Rhino Records coordinated a super deluxe 40th anniversary edition of the band's 1976 debut, featuring a wealth of alternate takes, an unreleased live concert, and an LP featuring a newly created mono mix of the album. Similarly expanded versions of Leave Home and Rocket to Russia followed in 2017, and a super deluxe Road to Ruin appeared in 2018.